Hello, I'm Pip, and welcome to the Midwife Pip podcast, the home of expert information and real chats on all things pregnancy, birth, and beyond. Now, today is a somewhat ad hoc, but also extra special conversation. I have managed to steal the wonderful Gem, who is half of the duo that make up Calm and Bright Sleep.
Before we even dive into it, it's so important to say that you should and you shouldn't. You should if sleep isn't working for you, and there are safe ways to do that, evidence-based ways and kind ways and responsive ways, and you shouldn't if it doesn't feel right and good for you.
I think for any new or expectant parent, when I say baby sleep, we automatically think of the news that we have seen recently regarding the undercover investigation that really brought to light the mess, really, that has become the baby sleep industry. And it is both terrifying, confusing, conflicting, and also really positively eye-opening all at once.
If you say to someone, I'm a maternity nurse, some parents, and again, when you're exhausted, you're vulnerable, right? And you're seeking help and wanting, almost coming from a really desperate place, which we know our families do when they first reach out, to be told I'm a maternity nurse or even a nursery nurse, you're not actually a registered nurse.
So I really wanted to sit down with someone who knows this space inside and out to get to grips with what is happening, what we need to look for, and to make sure that should we choose to support our little ones with sleep, we're doing it in a way that lines with our own values, but also crucially is safe. So thank you so much, Gem, for letting me steal you away from Eve's side, because I know you work together so closely, and unpicking this really, really important topical conversation.
So important, and thank you so much for having me. I'm so looking forward to talking to you and reassuring parents, because essentially that is what they need right now. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I don't know whether, who to trust, whether I should even sleep teach my baby, and I think also outside of the recent news and the coverage about regulation in the sleep industry, I think what this has done, and I completely understand why, it's brought to the surface, and I suppose it's kind of shone a light on sleep teaching in general and kind of should I, shouldn't I? And I think before we even dive into it, it's so important to say that you should and you shouldn't. You should if sleep isn't working for you, and there are safe ways to do that, evidence-based ways and kind ways and responsive ways, and you shouldn't if it doesn't feel right and good for you. And I think it's so easy to lose sight of our intuition as parents about what to do, but actually when there's so much noise, especially at the moment, the most important thing is what feels good for me, what feels right for me.
Absolutely. And I know that, Jen, you have such a holistic approach to supporting families. That is really at the heart of what you do and your ethos. And I think, the BBC, the undercover investigation, one of those powerful things that Olivia, who was the lactation consultant involved in the investigation, highlighted was this is not about debating sleep teaching or not. This is about the regulation and the safety of the industry. And that's really what we want to kind of, back and highlight as well. This is a separate conversation in terms of, for those who do choose to do some kind of sleep teaching or gain support with sleep, what that space then looks like for them. And that's what really, I'd love to hear what your first thoughts were, Jen, when you saw it. But I was partly shocked, but equally not surprised. And then I think really pleased, because I'm like, brilliant, we have lifted the lid. You and I knew there was a lot of this going on behind the scenes, right? And so
I know we've had conversations about this before, Pip, haven't we? And I said this on stories, that this is not a new thing. And how sad is it to say that we've been hearing stories of negligence and misconduct and misinformation. We've been in this space for 16 years, and probably for 10 of those, as the sleep industry's grown, we've seen it, we've heard it. And I think, so yes, I wasn't surprised like you, but I also feel relieved, because I think whilst we have never named or shamed, and it's just not our style, we would not do that. You know us, and we're inherently kind and supportive of parents. And it's not about us, really. It's not
Mm,
about what we believe about the industry. And of course, we have our opinions on it. But it's really about the fact that sleep regulation isn't there. Safe sleep practice isn't there across the board. So, yes, if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm really relieved that this has come to light. I'm really relieved. And I know I was just saying this to you before we came on, but what I wasn't expecting was the volume of messages from parents sharing their stories with us. And I think I found that so difficult, because whilst I knew it happened, and I think it's been filtered through over years and like almost like filtrated through different systems, through different parents. But what I was surprised at was the amount of stories from people about their experiences. And that has shocked me. I think that shocked me, because I don't think I even knew professionally or personally how bad some of the advice was, you know?
And I think for parents, Jeb, like when you recognize that actually maybe you have been advised something that's unsafe, you have, you know, unintentionally put your child at risk because you trusted somebody that you invested, you know, time, money, energy in, perhaps built a relationship with, that can feel really like regretful and
Mm,
shameful and
mm.
hard, can't it? It can really drive that kind of guilt. So I'm not surprised that you've had those messages. And I think it's really important that those families have that voice, because as we know, it's the voice of families that drive change the
Yeah, it
most, and that's
is.
what we're seeing.
It is, and that's what we're seeing, and that's what the BBC have shown in this story and in uncovering this, is real stories from real parents and from practitioners, but really wanting so much. And I think any practitioner in sleep, any pediatric nurse, any sleep consultant or sleep coach that is practicing well, the interests are always with the families. And I think if you lose sight of that for whatever reason, that in itself is a problem, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we spoke at the beginning, Jem, about this word regulation. Now, to you and I, you're a pediatric nurse. I'm a registered midwife. So to us, regulation is very clear in that we have a governing body, we provide evidence, you know, we are very tightly regulated to be able to have those titles and to practice like that. But to people thinking like, well, what is regulation? What does that mean? Why do we have an industry around something like baby sleep, which clearly has so many safety indicators, that isn't
So,
regulated?
yeah.
What does that mean, I suppose, to families listening, Jem, and thinking this is an unregulated industry? What does that mean to them?
First of all, I don't think families even knew that the sleep industry wasn't regulated, because it's almost so shocking to believe that that would be the case with something that is so important. So actually, lots of families have said, "Oh, I didn't know that the sleep industry wasn't regulated." And yes, exactly as you said, as registered pediatric nurses and registered midwives, we are under the NMC, the Nursing and Midwifery Council, and we're accountable. We have to continue our professional development, educate. And for us at Calm and Bright, all of our sleep experts are paediatric nurses or health visitors. And that was something that was important to me as a co-founder, with my background in child's health of 18 years. And yes, I always knew that it wasn't a requirement to be a paediatric nurse to be a sleep consultant. But to me, it made perfect sense that the people that I recruited within my team, and you know, Eve, who's OCN qualified in terms of sleep, the highest qualification you can get in sleep, I think to me it was important, because I over the years I thought, okay, so you can do a 2-day sleep course and this, but what came before that? And you know, and some sleep consultants are teachers and play specialists, and all really, you know, important experience. But for me, with something so important as safety, and also, you know, we're advising things like with feeding and with allergies. So how can that be, you know, how can you possibly do that with a 2-day sleep course, for example? So going back to what you said, like, I think lots of parents didn't know that the sleep industry wasn't regulated, and I think they're quite surprised. But in terms of what that looks like, exactly as you said, within our professional bodies, within our nursing and midwifery, having a regulation body where sleep consultants, sleep practitioners, maternity nurses, that's a whole other thing that we can talk about in a minute, but they're accountable, and that they are educated, and for them to be able to give advice to parents, being completely confident that what they're telling them is safe, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, the difficulty with anyone being able to do anything without that regulation is there is no accountability. So you can say
Exactly.
something to a family and there is nowhere, there's no one like watching you or making sure what you're doing is
No.
safe, or and that is what essentially leads to dangerous advice
Yeah.
being able to be given out. And I completely agree. It is completely mind-blowing that
Mm.
something like baby sleep, which we know has direct correlation with things like, you know, child development, attachment, behavior, but also things like sudden infant death syndrome. Like it's
Yes.
so correlated to all those things. And yet
Yeah.
anybody can be
Mm.
giving advice under a title like a sleep coach, a sleep
Yeah.
consultant. And as a family, as a desperate, I've been there, as a
Oh my
desperate tired
gosh.
parent, they
Yeah.
tell you they can fix it. And you're like, wonderful. You've got,
Yeah.
I don't know, 40,000 followers. You must be fantastic.
Yeah,
And that's dangerous.
exactly. And there's so much more to it than that, isn't there?
Mm.
Than you're following on Instagram. And we are influencers. It says it in the you know, I always say I'm not an influencer. If I'm an influencer, I'm an influencer for health, for good, for sleep. And
Mm.
I'm almost not offended by the title, of course, no shade to influencers at all. But I think we can, if someone is influencing, you know, what you buy, what you wear, and then they're also trying to influence you in terms of their parenting choices, you are influenced, aren't you? And it's having that influence that is regulated and that influence
Mm.
that is safe. And I think, you know, if we're looking at this from a feminist point of view and the way that there isn't any regulation, we are talking about a massive area with sleep and feeding and parenting counselling that is really predominantly impacting women and mothers.
Yeah.
Why is regulation not important when it's affecting such a huge amount of us? And, you know, on a feminist level, isn't that crazy?
Isn't it wild, Jeb? And I think it extends further. I know the spotlight is on sleep, and it extends further because we look at like the personal training or fitness industry is the same. We look at the birth space, it's all
Yes.
the same. You know, you do a 2-day course, a weekend course, a 2-week course, and suddenly you're in front of people at a really vulnerable and important time. You know, all these titles, you know, the hypnobirthing, the birth practitioner, you know, the
Yeah.
birth worker, the sleep coach, the sleep
Yeah.
trainer, they, you know, the gentle sleep coach, they're all completely unregulated
Yeah.
terms that you like anybody could just
You can literally make your
come up
own
with it.
title up. You can. And again, with the maternity nurse thing and the press that, you know, so sadly after that baby died, with the maternity nurse that came to light a few months ago. And I think that, you know, if you say to someone, I'm a maternity nurse, some parents, and again, when you're exhausted, you're vulnerable, right? And you're seeking
Yeah.
help and wanting, almost coming from a really desperate place, which we know our families do when they first reach out, to be told I'm a maternity nurse or even a nursery nurse, you're not actually a registered nurse.
Yeah. But it
No?
instills instant
Yeah.
trust, doesn't it? You're like,
It
oh,
feels
okay, you know
safe
what you're
and it
talking about.
feels, yeah, it feels safe when you say
Mm.
nurse practitioner, it feels safe.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. That's a wider problem.
It's a huge problem in this whole
Mm.
space, this whole industry. And it's for you and I that are, you know, yes, we're regulated, we're properly insured, you know, we have accountability to be up to date and to be evidence-based. It's immensely frustrating because you see how much of a awful, you know, sometimes lifelong detrimental impact that has on families. And it is not okay, which is why the likes of you and I see something like the BBC documentary, see the work of Olivia and Dr. Lily that were involved in that as well, and think, thank goodness
Yeah.
someone is showing what's going on behind the scenes, because it's not okay, it's not fair, and it's dangerous and can cause harm. So
Yeah.
hopefully this is the first stepping stone to changing what
Yeah.
this space looks like. But Jem, I am absolutely guilty in this, in that I knew about you and I was like, Jem's a pediatric nurse, brilliant. That ticked a box for me because I knew that, you know, you were going to be evidence-based, and
Yeah.
I felt instantly therefore I could trust, you know, the support that you gave. But what should families actually be looking for? Because you mentioned Eve's qualification there, and I can hand on heart say I don't know what that means. So I'm thinking other parents maybe don't know quite what they might be looking for to gain kind of reliable, trusting sleep support as well.
Yeah, it's such a good question, Pip, and so important. And I said this on stories recently on our Instagram page, but it's
Mm.
okay to ask. I think
Yeah.
we're so, we're especially as British women, we're like, oh, can I ask what qualifications you have? It's absolutely okay to ask, and it is the person who you are seeking advice from. It's their duty of care to tell you. So the
Mm.
things that we're looking for are. In terms of sleep, there are so many different sleep courses. Some of them are a little bit okay, and others are, they're recognized. And also with the OCN, which is the certificate that you want to look for in terms of sleep, and it's OCN London, because there are other OCNs which are good, but the highest qualification in baby sleep is OCN level 6 London. So
Okay.
that is the one that you're looking for, and that means that they are covering everything that is important: safe sleep, feeding, normal sleep patterns, biological norms, supporting parents. So if you do OCN, whatever your kind of background before, that is a really important qualification. And so for parents to look for that too. So if you're watching this and you're wanting to go into sleep consultancy, that's the one that you would do. And as parents, that's the one that you want to look for. And just be really careful, because yes, OCN is it's the highest level in sleep, and that's the recognized qualification, but also what happened before that. As a parent, when I was seeking advice for my daughter's tongue tie, I wanted to know that they were IBCLC trained. That was really important to me, the person that I used. So, and luckily we have an amazing feeding expert on Team Calm and Bright, so I didn't need to look very far. But in terms of what happened before, like for us within our team, our health visitors, you know you'll know this, Pip, but for those of you who don't, when you become a health visitor and you do what's called the SCIFIN qualification, which is the specialist public health qualification, it's a degree level. You need to have been a nurse before. So even within Common Bright, we're like, what sort of a nurse were you? Like Lucy, our
Mm.
paediatric sleep lead, she's a paediatric nurse and a health visitor. There are some health visitors who were adult nurses. And yes, that's okay. But what is your experience in child's health? Like I studied for 3 years paediatric nursing. So
Mhm.
it's kind of looking at what happened before the OCN, if anything.
That's so helpful. And I think, like you say, being able to ask those questions and also being able to ask for evidence of that as well, if you want to, like that is also okay. And I think especially with this coming to light, we are going to be of heightened anxiety, and it's making sure we really get those things right is so important. So ask again.
Ask, yeah, and really, essentially on your website, if you're seeking for support from someone's website, or if you're a sleep consultant, it needs to be there so that parents don't have to ask because they're exhausted, and it just
Mm.
should be there.
Absolutely. And I think any red flags. So I know that one of the things that was highlighted really clearly in the documentary, or in the not documentary, but in the investigation. I'd love it to be a documentary, but in the investigation
We can
was,
hope for
yeah,
that.
exactly, was around advice that is against what we know as very clear evidence-based safe sleep guidelines, which aren't grey. They are black and white. There are certain things
Yeah,
that we know protect babies and save lives,
yeah,
and they are really beautifully put in various different ways on the Lullaby Trust website. So
yes.
I'd always say to families, if your sleep coach or sleep consultant, whoever it is that you're working with, is advising you anything that doesn't align with the Lullaby Trust guidance, that
Yes.
has to be a red flag, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and this isn't about scaremongering parents. It's exactly what you said, Pip. They should be in alignment with the Lullaby Trust.
Mm.
All guidance should be. And within our bespoke program, we have a video with a link to the Lullaby Trust at the end. We have all of basically, essentially, their advice copied
Mm.
out. And they don't mind us doing that, just so that it's really clear. And if in doubt, just head to their website. They are so amazing, and they answer DMs. They put out loads of content. If you're a sleep practitioner, you can do the Lullaby Trust course for sleep practitioners, which is another nice, really lovely thing to do, and a safe thing to do. So yeah, it's all there. And if went at the start of our chat, Pip, when I was talking about intuition, if something doesn't feel safe, just check it out. There is nothing more important. And like you said, Pip, safe sleep guidance, it's not grey, it's really clear, and when it's followed, it's incredibly safe and effective. So it's not about
Mm.
scaring parents, it's about saying this advice is here to literally save your baby's life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing that I want to, I guess, just just be super clear on as well, Jem, is that sleep teaching, sleep training, we can kind of use this interchangeably. There shouldn't ever be one size fits all. And I know I feel this way when it comes to the birth space, and I know you guys feel this way with the sleep space. And it's why you make sure that you speak to families and you understand what's going on for families and their babies before you even suggest supporting or working with them. And you're really happy to signpost them to other things if you don't feel that things are well aligned or it's not the right time for them. What are some kind of red flags that you would see? I'm sure your algorithm throws you all of the advice. What sort of red flags would you see that actually, if you're a family working with someone and these things kind of crop up, that are kind of a bit of a no-go, stay clear?
So the first thing is no assessment. And we used to sell self-help generic plans. We did that for many years, and they were safe, and we had lullaby trust guidelines in there, and we always offered one-to-one support alongside it. But even when we did that, you always had to go through an assessment online. You know, is there any health concerns? And any child with health concerns or any parent that had anxiety or any worry, they would go straight to an assessment with us that was free. And this is another thing, you shouldn't be charged for a discovery call, because our discovery calls are really diving deep, looking at health, pregnancy, birth. Like, we go really deep into, you know, your childhood experiences. How do you feel about crying and protest? What are you worried about? Are you ready to make changes? Is there anything physical going on? We could just go on and on and on. How does your partner feel about this? There's so much to it. And so for us, that discovery call is really a chance for parents to tell us what's happening and to feel seen and heard, but also we're constantly assessing, you know, and we turn people away, and we never like to do that, but it's good practice if we don't feel that the teaching that we do is A, going to work, but B, isn't, you know, it's not the right time, or there's something physiological at play. And again, that assessment, it can't be done by someone that's done a 2-day sleep. It's impossible. I wouldn't have been able to do it as a student nurse, you know. So
And I
it's
think
just
that's the power of regulation, isn't it? That's you being like, actually, I have an accountability. I have a, you know, a kind of obligation under my regulation to support this family in a way that's appropriate.
Yeah, and again, you know, we did sell self-help plans, and we had that assessment process in place. So you can do it and sell generic plans. It's something that we moved away from so that we can really support families in the way that we need. And we're really lucky here that our team of paediatric nurses and health visitors offer an incredible support to our families. But it's not me saying you have to not do self-help plans. You know, we sold them and they worked beautifully. We moved away from them so that we could be certain that we would get results for families and support families as they needed. But you can still, I know that so many sleep practitioners are doing self-help plans. It's not shade on that. It's just saying, if you're selling a self-help plan that someone can just essentially buy off the internet, what assessment? Because to us, it would never feel right and good for us morally, ethically, for us to just sell someone a self-help plan that A, it might not work, but B, if your baby has reflux or colic or allergies, or you are navigating separation, or you're worried about the big transition from co-sleeping to not co-sleeping, you can't get that from a self-help plan. It's the very reason we moved away from it, you know.
And also the age appropriateness of babies, because I know this was something else that was sort of brought up, was sleep coaches trying to fix, you know, as if it needs fixing, but they're biological norms of a very young baby. And I think, I know one of the things that you're passionate about, and you guys talk about all the time, even just, you know, through your Instagram page, Jem, is that biological norms of a very young baby and supporting that attachment. And the idea that we can sleep teach, you know, a 6-week-old baby is,
oh my gosh,
unhelpful, unsafe, but we see it all the time. And again, that's definitely that red flag of this person is not qualified in the way that you need.
I'm so glad you said that, Pip, because when at the start we were talking about, you know, this isn't new to us, this isn't shocking to us, we've heard this before. I was thinking of the amount of parents that come to us and say, I was told to close the door, I was told that my baby didn't need a night feed. Like, anyone that is saying to you your baby doesn't need a night feed, yes, there are norms and biological norms, and Pip, you're absolutely right. We don't personally hear sleep teach pre 5 months because of biological norms, and that it's biologically normal for your baby to wake frequently, to need support with sleep. But also beyond the 6-month mark, you know, they may well still need a night feed. The NHS guidelines is clear. it clearly says beyond 6 months, most babies can go through the night without a feed. Others are closer to 12 months. I fed my daughter until she was 11 months, not because she needed it, because I needed it. We feed for other reasons than nutrition, don't we? We feed for comfort. So another red flag is you have to wean all night feeds. It's never been a condition of our program, and it never will be, because that's bad practice. It's such a personal thing, but we don't even look to wean night feeds before the 6 or 7 month mark. And some families on our program are still feeding through the night at 18 months. It's got to be it's got to feel right and good. There's no wrong when it comes to night feeds. The only wrong, I suppose, is being told to wean feeds before you're ready, which is, when I say the word catastrophic, I'm not dumbing it down. It's catastrophic emotionally, physically.
Yeah.
It's the thing that makes me so sad, and probably the thing that I struggle the most with when advice on feeding is given, because breastfeeding journeys end because of sleep teaching, and it should not be like that.
So true. And I think what you just mentioned now, Jen, with the idea of sleep teaching is you close the door and that's it. See you in 10 hours, 12 hours, is obviously not how we want to be doing sleep teaching for families, which is obviously really important to raise. But also that idea of like there's one size fits all, or that the aim of sleep teaching is to get a baby to sleep through the night without any comfort or feeds. And I think actually for a lot of families, it's okay, how do we maybe set more solid foundations, understand, like, when I had my first Gem, I genuinely thought if I kept him awake during the day, he'd sleep better at night. Like, I had no idea. So actually that education around biological norms, what's normal sleep, how to support that process is a massive part of it. And it's not necessarily you need to sleep through the night, but how do we get sleep to work in a way that works for everybody, however
That's
that looks.
right. Because you can't get sleep wrong. And I say this all the time. I feel like I need to slogan this. Sleep's not something you can get wrong. It's not a measure of your worth as a parent. You're not failing if your baby doesn't sleep. You're not failing if you're not ready to make changes to sleep. I spoke about this on one of our chats before, Pip, but my daughter Posey was one of a twin, and we lost her twin at 13 weeks. And I was absolutely not on board with sleeping separate from her. It was not something that I could physically or emotionally do. And when I say that to parents, or when I say, of course you can still keep them close, of course you can keep them in the same room, of course you can feed, it's like I literally watched their shoulders drop and then exhale, oh, okay. And what's, even sadder, I'll never forget this woman that I spoke about in our book. And I know Kate won't mind me saying her name, but she came to us at 12 weeks and she couldn't string a sentence together. She was so tired and so upset from being told that she had to close the door for her 12-week-old baby. And
oh my gosh.
And how I remember getting off the phone and ringing Eve in tears and saying, we just have to gift this mother some help, please. She'd paid thousands of pounds. And so we were almost we were reversing the sleep teaching. And we did 6 months of contact sleep and motion naps. And he's 7 now and he's sleeping beautifully.
Power in that. But that's because your nursing brain, understands the power of secure attachment and knows how important that early connection is. And I remember you saying to me, Jen, with our second Alfie, I remember first of all, my husband had a conversation with you and said, we're only having a second baby if we do sleep differently, Jen. And you guys were like, yeah, don't worry, like we've got this. So we did all the work beforehand, understanding how to set the, nice, gentle attachment foundations this time. And then our little Alfie had meningitis at 5 weeks. And I remember you being like, so co-sleep then. If you don't want him away from you, don't have him away from you. And I was like, oh yeah, perfect, thank you. We'll do that.
And I think it's sometimes not that you need permission, but it is getting that permission to just do what feels right and good. And I talk so much about the mother compass and father compass, about what is right and good for you. And it's so hard to tune into that when there's so much noise. But does it feel good? If you're watching something on Instagram from a health visitor, a nurse, from a sleep coach, from a midwife, anyone, how does it make you feel? Because in some sleep spaces here online, there's a lot of judgment and negative energy and negative language and shaming for, on both sides, shaming to drop feeds, shaming people that are ready to move away from that. And, it is also important to talk about what's possible beyond 6 months, because solid sleep is possible if you're ready, but it's okay to, if you're feeling stuck, to make changes too. So it's, if you're following someone and you're feeling, actually, it's a feeling, isn't it, Pip? Then just
Absolutely.
unfollow them. It's got to feel in alignment with you and your parenting style. And for everyone, that is so different.
Yeah, that gut instinct is, we know our babies better than anyone
Yeah.
ever will, don't we? And that gut instinct is so, so, so important. And I think, yeah, I'm so pleased that we've kind of had this chat, Jem, because I think those things we really wanted to bring to light in terms of, this can feel scary. It can make the sleep industry waters feel really muddied, but actually, out of it all, for parents, if we can bring that positive clarity of, this is a
Yeah.
great thing, it's lifted the lid on the fact that there are some people practicing in the sleep industry that frankly shouldn't be, but there's
Yeah.
also some fantastic people out there that are qualified and delivering really safe,
Mm.
effective, compassionate, personalized sleep support to families that, my goodness, changed our life, for sure. Like, so I think just allowing families to know this is a real positive, because it allows us to, like,
It is.
understand what's really going on and make that informed choice about who we choose to, you know,
Yeah.
part our trust and our money and our time and our,
Yeah.
our precious babies with.
It's a choice, and it really is a choice that you have. And it's so important that you always keep hold of the fact that you are the expert in your baby. Always,
Mm.
always you.
And Jem, if we've got a new parent listening who is thinking, I do need help with sleep, what are the kind of top tips you would recommend for them finding someone who is going to be safe and properly qualified and that they can actually trust?
So reach out, and you would want to get a response personally, not from a kind of ManyChat automated response. You would definitely want an assessment to be done first to see whether they can help you. You would want to feel seen and heard. I always say this, but on our discovery calls, I listen so much more than I talk, because I want parents to feel held, and often make mums cry. Sorry if I do that in DMs. If you're listening to this and you've had to voice it and it's made you cry, but that's, I want you to feel held and supported. I want you to feel held. So, yeah, so if families reaching out, so a response from the person that is doing it essentially, or is representing them, an assessment, to be able to show you their qualifications and to really listen to what's important to you, because sleep isn't linear. There are so many different parts of it, and everyone's sleep journey is different. So it's setting those expectations that if you want to go really gently, it might take a little bit longer. That's okay. Do you want to keep night feeds in? What pace do you want to go at? How are you feeling? You need to be feeling really held and supported. And there are companies, not just ours, but companies and people and practitioners who can do that for you. So you don't have to just settle, and make sure that you do your research, because you are advocating for your baby, you're advocating for their safety, and that is your responsibility.
Oh, Jem, you are amazing. Honestly, thank you so much for the work that you do. And if anyone is thinking, either you want to connect with Jem, maybe you want to just soundboard whether the kind of thing that you're doing is safe, and maybe it's sort of hearing the things in the news, hearing us talk has made you think, gosh, actually, is what we're doing right? And you're not sure, then do reach out to Jem. It is Jem who you will speak to in any Instagram message.
Uh,
So
It's
calm and
me.
bright is I'll link in the episode description as well, so you absolutely can reach out, because like we say, this is really, really important stuff, and I'm so pleased. So big thanks to the work with the BBC and
Yeah.
Olivia, the lactation consultant, and Dr. Lee that was involved as well, because this is such important life-saving work, isn't it? Let's
Life
call it what it is.
saving. Yes, thank you so much to everyone involved. And thank you, Pip, for having me. I've literally loved our chat so much.
Oh, thanks so much, Jem, and I will speak to you soon.